the next morning we wake up, we're staying in this Airbnb, and we're all like getting ready to leave, and um, my now booking agent is like, hey, Sticky Fingers are playing at the Fonda in LA.
Hey, what's up, Tommy? How are you?
Good, how are you? Can you see me? Oh yeah, there I am. Okay.
Looking good. I appreciate you doing
Sweet.
this.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Cool. I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new song and how you got to where you are now.
Sweet, Adam. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I did read you were born in Manchester, but grew up in Kansas. Is that what I
Yeah.
saw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of an odd one, but yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. Well, tell me about that a little bit. How long were you in Manchester for?
Um, so obviously I was born there, and I think right around when I was about 5 or 6, my parents decided to move to Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So I wasn't in the UK for that long. I mean, I have memories of it, but yeah, I wasn't there for that long, and we moved to Dallas, Texas, and that was like a completely polar opposite place.
Oh, sure. Were you in like like what part of Dallas? I have family in like the Plano area. I don't know if you know where that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. We were in Keller,
Okay.
Texas, and I was there. I mean, we were there for about 5 years,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean, it's completely different. I was just this kid with like a British accent in Dallas, trying to just starting school and just trying to figure out what was going on. I didn't even have any concept of the world or like, Earth or continents or anything like that. I just thought we were going away down the street, but
Sure.
everyone's accents are different and like everything's bigger and everything looks different and yeah, so that was kind of crazy for me as I remember as a kid, but you just get used to it. And
Well, it doesn't. I mean, you don't have an accent anymore. It doesn't sound like. Was that
no,
something
yeah.
that slowly went away? And do your parents both have British
Yes.
accent? Okay.
Yeah, it didn't slowly go away. It went away very, very quickly. And I all of a sudden had this sort of drawl like Texan, I was saying y'all and I was saying, yes ma'am, y'all, yes sir, and all this kind
Sure.
of thing. And that was within like 6 months, I would say, to a year. Like just gone.
Really?
Like I
That's
think that's just
quick.
how impressionable it is at that age. Like even when I was at home with my parents who had this northern accent from the
Mhm.
UK, like I was more like getting into school and having friends, and immediately it just dissipated. And same with my brother.
Wow. Older or
Yeah,
younger?
my brother's 2 years older than I am.
Okay. Wow.
But
So
yeah, my
you,
parents my parents still have an accent.
yeah, that's interesting. I have one of my great friends growing up. His parents are from Bristol, and
Yeah,
but his dad moved around a bunch for work. He has an older brother. He was actually born in Singapore, which is random, but
yeah,
then he moved to San Diego where I lived. But he doesn't have an accent, and his brother's like 3 or 4 years older than him, and he
yeah,
does. So
yeah,
it was just like the timing, how they were where they were raised, and then how when they landed here, or well, I'm in Nashville now, but when they landed in California, um, his brother never lost the accent, but he never had it, which is
yeah.
just so fascinating.
It's strange. I don't know how. I mean, just impressionable. But yeah, it's strange. Some people don't lose it. I always
Right.
thought my parents would at some point, but I guess
Yeah.
they're almost 30 by the time that we moved to the US, so I don't think I think it sticks around at that point.
Yeah, I ain't going anywhere at that point for sure. Wow. Okay. Were you born into a musical household at all?
No, not at all. I mean, the only music that went on in my household was just the music that my parents were listening to. My parents loved listening to music, but as far as like making music or being creative in that sense, like not no musical sort of background from my parents or even my grandparents or anything like that.
What were they listening to?
So I mean early 2000s, I mean it was just like a cabinet of CDs upon CDs upon CDs of just hundreds of CDs, and they were, rocking 80s all the way into 90s and into early 2000s. Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the Smiths, the Killers, the Strokes.
Okay.
Um, I mean, they were definitely, when they were my age now, like, just they were into music. Like, that was a big part of their lives. So, yeah, when growing up, they had all these CDs, and that's sort of how I got into finding my preferred listening. What I like
Sure.
to listen to. It was through them, so
Okay.
I definitely owe that to them as far as like getting into good music. But as far as playing an instrument or singing or anything like that, like, no, they don't have any of that in them. So
When did you start playing an instrument? How old are you?
I was 14. My best friend at the time was like so good at guitar, and I thought it was so cool. And he wanted me to try to learn, and I tried for a couple days, and I was like, man, this is crazy. I can't I can't do it. Like, I realized it was just so hard, and he kept convincing me to just keep trying. And it's like a weird switch in your head when you like pick up something that you become interested in. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment where like I'd learned enough to play like pumped up kicks, like just the little melody.
Okay.
It just like plucking along, like it didn't sound good, but I was getting there, and I like switch went off in my brain, and I was like, oh my God, like I have to keep going, I have to keep going. And that like turned into like 4 or 5 hours a day just on YouTube, like Marty Schwartz. It's kind of he's like a guitar tutorial guy on there, pretty notorious, but he I would watch his videos and just learn how to play guitar. And I'd spent so much time every day until I got to a point where like I could start making songs.
So he was like your your guitar teacher.
Yeah, he's pretty famous.
I
For
just
people,
looked to. I was like, the name sounded familiar. I googled him, and now I know exactly who he is.
yeah, he's got this look about him, and he's just like he's perfect guitar teacher online. So
He is. What did I wanted to learn how to play something, and I watched him. This was like fairly recently ago. I'm not very good at guitar at all. I mean, I could play chords. So I'm like, okay, let's see like YouTube tutorial. I forgot what it was, but that's so funny that's
yeah,
exactly who I
yeah, he's been doing it
I saw.
for years, man. That's
Oh
that's Marty
man.
Schwartz. He doesn't mess around.
He does not. Yeah, he's a legend, man. From what I
Uh huh.
saw, I was like, damn, this guy teaches it quick.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
7 minutes, I've already got the whole song done. But
Exactly.
that's funny. Okay, cool. So you picked up guitar around 14, and it's cool that you are in the age demo of YouTube. That was not me. I had to learn off like tabs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Yeah.
when do you start trying to write your own music?
So I started writing my own music probably about a year after I'd picked up my first guitar, and that was when I was good enough to like, you know, play some chords and um, really sit down and write something. And weirdly for me, like I was never super interested in learning other music. Like I liked the idea of that, but as soon as I got good enough at guitar to play a song, it was just straight on to like I'm making my own song. It was never like, I mean, I have friends that are really good at guitar and they can just bust out like any song. Like you ask them, "Yo, do like Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers," and they're just like right there, just bang.
Right.
They've learned it like
Sure.
it's in their Rolodex of songs, 100 songs that they can play.
Hmm.
And I just never liked that. Like I could I could probably bust out like 2 songs even today that aren't mine that I could probably just
What
get
name
through.
them? Pumped up
Um,
kicks.
yeah, yeah. Pumped Up Kicks still in my Rolodex. Yeah, and then probably just some killer song or something like that.
Right on.
Um, but I was always interested in like make just writing songs and just freely like playing chords and um, you know, I wanted to. That's what opened me up into the world of like, oh, okay, how do I record this? Obviously, I can use my phone, but that's not going to do the trick really if I want to create music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, you know, YouTube, man, I'm an iPad baby. I have that YouTube in my blood.
Mm-hmm.
So you get on YouTube and I'm like, how do I record a song? Like, what do I do? And this was like right around when like Vine
Oh,
was
okay.
a popular app,
It's like
you know,
2000, what was it, 10 or
15
15? Okay,
maybe.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
much little bit later than it. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Um, I think it popped off in like 2013, and then you know I picked up a guitar, and then yeah, so I'm on Vine, and I'm always following these people that are like posting music stuff, and I met one of my best friends now, who's also a musician, John Vincent the third, and I saw him on Vine, and he was just making little videos of himself with this microphone and had this software pulled up, and I was like, man, like what is all that? And I sent him a message, and I was like how do I like do what you're doing? Like you're recording a song like in your bedroom. Like how do I do that? And he sent me a bunch of messages about like a microphone, a cheap microphone, and like how to put it on your computer and make music on there. And yeah, then I just kind of hopped on YouTube, and it was that was the part that was probably harder than like learning guitar. It was like learning how to use a DAW, which is like a digital audio
Mm-hmm.
workstation, and you know, getting my first laptop. Yeah, having to save up for that and save up for all these things that I needed to buy, and I finally had like probably the cheapest setup you could get in your bedroom, just like a, you know, Audio Technica like mic and Garage Band
Mm-hmm.
on my MacBook.
But it worked, right?
And yeah, and I had a little Scarlett, which is just an audio interface, and
Yeah, that's what I'm still using right now for
yeah,
this,
dude.
Scarlett.
I mean, trusty, always gonna work. And I got everything set up, and that's when I started, you know, hitting that record button
Mm-hmm.
and getting my ideas into that and being able to save them and send them around. And that was when it really sort of took off for me, because I was like, as soon as I had like a little song that I made, you know, it wasn't mixed or mastered or anything like that. It was just sort of what we would call a demo, obviously. And um, but that was it for me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make an album, because in my head, like that's just what musicians do.
Right. You're right, sure. I mean,
So
it was what musicians did in the
yeah,
90s and 80s and early 2000s, right?
so like, and that was it. I was like, all right, I'll make an album, and that's what I did. It took me like a year or two, and
And yeah,
got it
you put
out.
out right out the gate. I mean, you put
Yeah,
out a full record, which is incredible. Not
yeah.
many people. I mean, and it's called Just to Be Ironic. That's the record. And that wasn't, I mean, it's weird to think 2018 was 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the last 2 years have been weird. But was like when you put that record out, did you put it out all as one big lump? Like, here's the whole album, or were you able to kind of choose a song to be the first like single or the first thing
Yeah.
that you know Tommy Newport puts out into the world, and like this is me, or like how did you go about releasing music for the first time?
Um. Yeah. So that record it could actually be considered my second album, because the year prior to that, I had put out this thing on SoundCloud, and it's on Spotify and iTunes now, but it's called So Long and Thanks, and it was just under my last name. So that was the first
Oh, I
album that
didn't
I had
dig
put
deep
out.
enough to find that one.
Yeah, and it's not under Tommy Newport or anything like that, and it's under my real last name, which is Millmine. And I put that out just for me, really, just for my friends and family. And I really, my goal, I just wanted to see it on iTunes. Like, to me, I thought that was it. Like, that was the
Right.
coolest thing ever. Just want to see like my song on iTunes, and that's the only reason I did it. And so I made this album and I put it out, and I mean, it did way better than I ever thought. And I didn't have any marketing or anything like that. I just put it online, and this was at a time when like SoundCloud was a very like pivotal tool for artists.
Hmm.
And I had put it on SoundCloud, and that's where it gained most of its traction. And from that traction is where my manager, Fourth Pyramid, had messaged me on Instagram and wanted to work with me, wanted to manage me as an artist. And that's when Just to Be Ironic sort of comes into the picture, and when I
Oh,
sort of
wow.
start
So,
taking things seriously, and um, that's when we started working together, and came up with Tommy Newport, and Just to Be Ironic in that album.
oh man. So this all started off on SoundCloud. I mean, SoundCloud, I don't know if it still is. I'm sure it's got to be, a massive thing for people to discover new music.
Sure.
But there's been, interviewed so many people that got their start on SoundCloud,
Yeah.
or they put a start because a few years before that, it was like Hype Machine. If you put your song
Hmm.
on, it got on a blog, and then it landed on Hype Machine, like that was the end all,
That was it. Yeah.
And then it became, you have artists like Powfu and different people that have came out of the SoundCloud
Yep.
era of music.
Yep.
And I feel like, I mean, SoundCloud is still a huge,
Oh
huge
yeah, it's huge.
source, but like now there is, with Spotify, and people are looking at the Spotify numbers or going to Spotify to discover
Yeah.
stuff. But that's really cool that you kind of were able to, but to even to change the name and then put a record out and still have people come.
Yeah, that
I
was
mean,
my
tell me about
biggest.
that. Was that difficult to do?
I was definitely worried about it, and I didn't know if I was making the right choice. Um, but ultimately, it was just a risk that I wanted to take, and like I said, when I first put out my first album or mixtape of songs, I did it for me, and there was no sort of methodical thinking behind it. There was no like, I mean, nowadays, if you are serious about being an artist and you want to release a song or a project, like, you've got to be thinking about all these things. Like, what is your image like? What, do you have a good video that goes along with it? Are you on social media? And I wasn't thinking about any of that with the first project, and it just did its thing on SoundCloud. But when my managers found me and I agreed to work with him, then it was sort of like, all right, well, step one is, you know, let's let's get an idea of like how you want to present yourself. Who do you want to be, and what kind of stories do you want to tell, and like what's the vibe behind the covers and the cover art and the imagery that you're using. And that was a big part for me too, that I was very much into. I was heavily into like graphic design when I was in high school, and so it was a step up for me to like start taking things like seriously and methodically thinking about things. And but it was, yeah, it's definitely a risk. It was like, okay, I'm gonna leave this thing that's kind of doing well, and try to convince everyone to come over here and check out this new thing I'm doing. um but I think it worked out in the end,
Mhm.
and I'm happy with the decision that we made, and starting from square one, and sort of taking on this fresh new thing, and keeping it, you know as it was.
Sure. Like sonically, does just to be ironic line up with what you were doing before, or did you even change paths there?
Definitely. I mean, it depends on, really everyone else's ear. So like, I feel like personally I didn't change anything on purpose. I think when I put the first project out, again, I didn't have any, you know, knowledge of mixing music or mastering music, or
Mhm.
using, any type of gear to get it to a higher standard. It was very lo-fi, very basement bedroom sort of indie rock, that just wasn't hitting at the right decibel to be
Mhm.
considered not a demo. So that was just a demo album. So definitely the big major change into Just to Be Ironic, and my real first album, was getting that thing mixed and mastered and recorded properly, through some better gear. And that definitely alters the way something sounds. If people find you with this lo-fi sort of bedroom, unmixed demo album, and then I've moved into this area where my next album is mixed and polished, and it's
Mhm.
louder and it's mastered. Yeah, it probably sounds different, and I definitely think I experimented with new ideas on that second album. And
But you didn't go totally like, out in the weeds. It wasn't like, okay, now this new project, I'm gonna do this.
right.
It doesn't sound like that was the case.
Yeah, yeah, and it took on a bit more of like a more indie pop rock life form with Tommy Newport. The
Hmm.
earlier stuff was just sort of like very bare bones, This first started writing songs, so it was like verse, chorus, song over,
Right.
and it's sort of reverbed out surf guitars and things like that. And when I got the chance to work with it with my manager, who is also a producer, he's starting now to sort of put his input in and seed some of his ideas, and we kind of get this hybrid of a new sound, but still myself, and it's a bit more poppy and a bit more heavy hitting, I would think. That'd be the right word to use, but
Hmm.
yeah. So it's different in its own way, but I don't think it was anything that it was intentional. It was just the next step for me, really.
Sure. Sure. And when you come out as Tommy Newport, what song, or was there, like, how did you start seeing traction on that? And obviously SoundCloud was what got it going, but then
Yeah,
you changed the name, and then you put out this other record under a different name,
right.
different project. Then how do people
Yeah,
find it, and how does it, garner the streams that it has?
yeah. Like you asked earlier, if I just kind of put the whole thing out on its own, or if I had any singles. Um, and this was a time on Spotify where sort of playlists and things like that were a bit easier to sort of obtain as a new artist.
Hmm.
And so this sort of style of releasing music is, um, not normally it's like you put out the single or maybe another single and then you put the album out. And we wanted to sort of try this new way of like, why don't we put out 4 or 5 songs off of the album, which has 13 songs,
Hmm.
and just give each of those songs a bit of time to breathe and be their own thing, and then we'll see how it goes from there, and then we can put the whole thing out after that. So I think it was about 5 songs off of the album that were all singles.
Oh, so you
And
were kind of ahead of the curve on this new approach
yeah,
of releasing music.
yes. So and that's what we did. And the first song that we put out as a single is called "I Forgive You," the
Hmm.
first Tommy Newport song. um Immediately just hit this playlist on Spotify. It's slipping my mind what playlist it is, but I should really know, because it's kind of what jump started that album. And yeah, I think I got up one day and I was on checking the artist app on Spotify, and the song had just spiked up to like 60,000 plays in a day, and I was just like, oh my, this is crazy. And from that moment on, I was just kind of addicted to Spotify playlists.
Yeah, I would be too.
Forever chasing that moment. But yeah, that was the jump start of Tommy Newport. It was his Spotify playlist. And
Wow.
yeah, and
So,
they were a bit more easier to sort of obtain back in the day, and you kind of had your own ways of figuring out how to do it. But it, it's the landscape's always changing. So
mhm. And you've been able to kind of not follow suit, but like f- follow up your work. I mean, it's not like you had, the big song off of that album, and then your streams or whatever started to dip down. It's like
yeah,
every record you've been putting out has continually grew,
yeah,
and you've done so well with everything you wrote, and you've put out. Was that a concern at all going into the second, batch of music that you released?
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always nerve wracking putting out a song. It's like there's no rhyme or reason to any of you know the statistics behind them. Like, and I learned early on that like I just have to stop sort of obsessing and looking at how well a song is doing, because that's not the reason that I make the songs. You know, when you're a small artist, it sort of feels like you're always like waiting for that thing, that moment that's gonna like change your life. And it's a really slow, gradual process. You have to work at it and work hard, and uh, keep 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 on the track. And yeah, it's definitely, it can be sort of underwhelming. You put out a new song and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's no one's listening to it. But you just have to kind of take your time with it. And yeah, so putting out another project after the album, it's always this feeling of like, oh, no one's gonna like it, or no one's gonna listen to it, or but you just kind of have to, you know get into a better headspace, and just hope. And I've been lucky enough that, um you know like you said, so we just keep putting this music out, and people, thankfully, are listening to it.
Sure, sure. With that, like, I mean, putting out the second project you did, Tommy Gun, with like, you gained all these streams and these fans. Do you start going out and trying to play live shows or touring at all?
Yeah.
I know you just did a tour, earlier this month, but like, are you trying to go, okay, now I have this fan base online. Do I try to reach them, in person? And then obviously the pandemic hits right after that.
Yep.
Like, or were you still mainly just playing or recording and then releasing, recording and releasing?
Yeah. So after the Just to Be Ironic had come out, um that was when I met up with my talent agency, and met my booking agent, who I'm very grateful for. He took me on when I didn't have, I just put this album out. I didn't have enough to really prove that I could go and do a tour.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he believed in me, and we're still working together today. And um, he put me on tour with Sticky Fingers, which was another act that he was working with. And I've been a fan of these guys, since before I was making songs. So I was like, man, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was stoked to go and do it. So yeah, like right off the back of that album, that was when we went out and went and did some live shows and did my first tour.
What was that like? Had you ever played in front of anyone before?
Um, it was incredible, and we got to get a taste of it, because I went to, before we went on tour with Sticky Fingers. I had these people in LA that had this sort of backyard, surf rock, um, little festival that they had set up. And I got a message on Instagram, and they're like, "Yo, you should come and do a little set at our little festival we're doing." And I told my manager, and this is when everything was all pretty new. I don't even think the album was out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just to Be Ironic wasn't out yet. And he was like, "Yeah, I mean, if you can drive down there with your band and get there, I don't see why not. It'd be fun, something to do." And so we drive down to LA. I've got like four guys in my band, and we go and do this backyard show. And it was a good time, and we had fun. And um the next morning we wake up, we're staying in this Airbnb, and we're all like getting ready to leave. And um my now booking agent is like, "Hey, Sticky Fingers are playing at the Fonda in LA
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow night, and you can open up for them if you want. You can get up
Wow.
there and open up." And so, I mean, then the Fonda is like, I mean, this was a sold out show at the Fonda. It's a pretty big venue, and
Yeah.
never done anything like that in my life. And
It's a
so
really,
I'm,
I mean, so many huge bands have played there. I
oh
think,
yeah.
I
And I,
mean, the two I can think of off the top of my head, being from San Diego, that I remember, vividly seeing on the marquee, are like Tom Petty
yeah,
and the Backstreet Boys.
yeah. I mean, total legendary venue in
Yeah.
LA. And so I'm like freaking out, looking around at the guys, like, "Man, should we do this?" Like, I was nervous just getting off the phone. Like, I don't even know if I can.
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any real Tommy Newport music out at that point. So um, we were playing the stuff on that album that I made when it was just like the demos and stuff, my first album. And so we're like, yeah, let's do it. And we went and borrowed this drum kit from a now buddy, Dylan Brewer. Went to his house in Studio City, and they had this really old drum kit because we didn't show up with one. And we got that all cleaned up and tuned up, and then we showed up at the Fonda the next day and got on stage and did our little 30-minute slot, and that was like my first ever real show was at the Fonda.
That's crazy.
And yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 months later we were touring with the Sticky guys, across the East Coast. And yeah, it's incredible. I got really lucky, you know. I got really lucky at the start, and been fortunate enough to be able to go and do that tour and sort of share my music with people. And yeah.
That's huge. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell me. So then, you've got this momentum going. You're doing this tour. You've got a bunch of streams, and then the pandemic hits. And how does that put like kind of a halt to like the what you were building up? Do you feel like, or were you at a place that you were
Yeah.
trying to sit and write music anyway? Like, I mean, obviously the pandemic was horrible on everybody, but
Right.
did it land in a slot where you were already kind of just creating, or?
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit, I had a show lined up back in LA with Lime Cordiale, and I was kind of getting ready to go and do that. And there was talks of getting back out on the road with them, and
Mhm.
maybe going out to Europe and doing something out there. And I mean, there's a lot of talks of touring and doing shows. Um and the other issue is like I was here in Kansas too. I had never really made the full-time move to LA, and I was about to do that. I was gearing up to go move and find a place and do some shows with Lime, and get into the studio. And um the pandemic just kind of came through, right after Christmas. I usually during the holidays anyway, I'm not really working, I'm not doing much. So getting ready to jump back into being a musician, after New Year's. And there's all this stuff in the news about coronavirus, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll kind of just hold off, see what's going on with this thing. And then travel shut down, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I didn't get to move to LA, and didn't get to go do those shows. And obviously during that time everyone's sort of like, oh, they'll be over soon, surely it'll be over soon.
Yeah, flatten the curve, man. 2 weeks.
But no, the next 2 years really was just trying to navigate this, trying to make music remotely, and trying to keep things alive, trying to stay present online and interesting. And um, yeah, it was tough. And it was just a lot of sort of planning and a lot of making music. I made a lot of music, and I eventually got to the point, I think it was in 20, gosh, my time perception is all messed up because of COVID, but I got to
Right.
fly back into LA and make my EP Liquid, which was the last project I put out.
I was gonna say you put out two EPs in
Yeah,
2021, right?
yeah,
Ultra Mango and Liquid. Like
yeah.
you obviously were doing a lot, a lot of writing.
A lot of writing. And Liquid was the one where me and Forth just sat down for 11 days in LA. And we weren't allowed to really leave or meet up with people. This was when, like, you're still sort of not going out. And I don't even think the vaccine was out at this point. And I had driven to LA in my car, and I took some of my gear, and we met up and made this EP from day one all the way till day 10 or 11 or 12. We just shut ourselves in and made this project. and then
Wow.
um, and then I went home and we put it out. And yeah, then again, there's a lot of waiting around, and then finally I've been able to go back out on tour and travel
Hmm.
more. And
You got a couple songs that you just put out.
yeah, a couple songs. So yeah, it's kind of It's opening up now, and I'm getting excited. So
That's awesome, man. And Calabasas and Tongue in Cheek are the new-ish, I mean, newest ones. I know
yeah,
that new one would be Tongue in Cheek,
yeah,
but with those songs, are they going to be part of another project?
yeah. So it's finally the second album is coming.
Interesting.
September 28th, I believe, as of today, is when it'll be out. Um, and those are two of the singles that are gonna be on that album. And it's been a long time coming, so I'm
Yeah.
excited.
So I mean, it's crazy to think that you just put out two EPs and now you have a whole album. Are these like with Liquid? You said you locked yourself up
Mm-hmm.
for 11 days and pretty much did the whole record. Then
Mm-hmm.
with this album, how long have you been working on these songs? Or are there songs that you have kind of taken that maybe you wrote, in 2019 or something
Exactly.
and reworked?
Yeah, some of these songs, like Tongue in Cheek and Calabasas, are, older than some of the records on Liquid. They're ideas that I've had, demos that have been on my computer, just sort of waiting to be, reopened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of it were just very short ideas that I really wanted to get back into. And I also was able to get back to LA quite a bit this year and do a lot of work and write a lot of songs and work with some producers and um, get into some studios and make some music that way as well. So yeah, some of the records on this album are ideas I've been waiting to sort of, you know, expand on for a couple years now. And yeah, I'm super excited. I'm
That's
super
amazing.
excited. Yeah.
Rad. Well, I love to see those two thus far, and I'm stoked that you got to reschedule that tour. I mean, you just get off some of those shows,
Yeah.
and I appreciate your time today, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, dude, this is really great. I really appreciate you you know, talking with me. Some really good questions. So,
Appreciate it. I do have one more before I
yeah.
let you go, though. If you have any advice for aspiring artists,
Man, my advice for aspiring artists, I think just focus on what you've started doing it for, I see a lot of people sort of they try to do the social media thing and the virality and the TikTok thing before, like, they've really focused on what it is they're putting on those apps, and I think if you're say you're a musician, I think, focus on making sure that, like, the songs that you're making are really the ones that you want to be making, and that you yourself are enjoying, the things that you're creating. I think it's important to get that part down first, get to a point where you really know who you are as an artist and, like, the songs that you're making, and getting to a point where you're really comfortable with the music that you're making. And then sort of start worrying about, like, is anyone going to listen to this? Where should I post this? Who should I talk to? You know, how many TikToks do I need to make, and all that kind of jazz. It's important to get what you're sharing to other people, down to a T before you start sharing it.
Bringing it backward.